This is a hybrid hearing. We have some members participating remotely, so I have to read this statement. Members who are joining remotely must be visible on screen for the purposes of identity verification, establishing and maintaining a quorum, participating in the proceeding, and voting. Those members must continue to use the software platform's video function while in attendance unless they experience connectivity issues or other technical problems that render them unable to participate on camera. If a member experiences technical difficulties, they should contact the committee staff for assistance. Video of members' participation will be broadcast in the room and via the television internet feeds. Members participating remotely must seek recognition verbally, and they are asked to mute their microphones when they are not speaking. Members who are participating remotely are reminded to keep the software platform's video function on the entire time they attend the proceeding. Members may leave and rejoin the proceeding. If members depart for a short while for reasons other than joining a different proceeding, they should leave the video function on. If members will be absent for a significant period or depart to join a different proceeding, they should exit the software platform entirely and then rejoin it if they return. Members may use the software platform's chat feature to communicate with staff regarding technical or logistical support issues only. Finally, I have designated a committee staff member to, if necessary, mute unrecognized members' microphones to cancel any inadvertent background noise that may disrupt the proceeding. So, thank you for joining us. Today, the full committee is hearing on engagement with allies and partners. We have two witnesses with us this morning, the Honorable Mara Karlin, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy, Plans, and Capabilities from DOD, and the Honorable Jessica Lewis, who is Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs, Department of State. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here. To some degree, the topic is self-explanatory, so I'll try not to go on too long in my opening statement, except to say that partners and allies are absolutely crucial to everything that we're doing in the world. Certainly in this moment, we understand that as well as we ever had. In our efforts to stop Russia's unlawful invasion of Ukraine, to make sure that Putin does not succeed in this, we could not possibly do it on our own, clearly and obviously. And the stronger our partnerships are in the world, the better able we are to bring pressure against Russia and to support Ukraine in this effort. And this applies across the board to the global challenges that we face. And there has been a lot of talk in the last few years about how we're pivoting from one threat to another. You know, we have the discussion, what is the greatest threat we face? Let's, pick one and focus on it. China is the popular one to focus on. But I think on this committee, we all recognize that the threat list is pretty clear. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and transnational terrorist threats. I'll give a prize, by the way, to anyone who comes up with the mnemonic for that, so we can just sum it up in a quick little acronym. But that's it. And when you ask the question, okay, which one of these threats worries you the most? That depends on the day, okay? There's no way we can say, okay, well, those two, they aren't really a big problem. They're all there, and they all have the potential to rise to the top in any given moment. As powerful as we are as a nation, as strong as our military and our economy are, we could not possibly meet all of those threats on our own. The way to meet those threats is through allies and partnerships and through a rules-based international order, which is the entire point of what we've been trying to set up since the end of World War II, and the thing that right now Vladimir Putin both threatens most profoundly, but also is making it clear why it is so important for nations of the world to join in that effort. So to do that, we need to work on partnerships, and we have been. And I think the Biden administration has done an excellent job in the year plus that they've been in office of reaching out to allies and trying to build those partnerships. And that comes in a variety of different forms. Certainly we have re-engaged with NATO, worked more closely with Europe to build up that partnership, but also in Asia we have the Quad, as it is now being called, with India, Japan, Australia, and the U.S. Working together on a variety of different issues. The AUKUS agreement, which brought us closer with Australia and the United Kingdom, was another way to partner. On a number of different issues, we look for ways to work more closely with India. Partnership is crucial to us meeting those national security objectives, and connected to that, of course, is building partner capacity. The better off our partners are to help us with national security threats, to help us with development assistance, the more hands we have to accomplish the goals and tasks that we are looking to accomplish. So I think this is an incredibly important hearing just in general, but particularly now as we are directly confronted with a threat that requires a global response, that requires allies and partners to work together. It drives home why that issue is so important. So I look forward to the testimony and the questions and answers. And with that, I yield to Ranking Member Rogers for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr.
But particularly now, as we are directly confronted with a threat that requires a global response, that requires allies and partners to work together, it drives home why that issue is so important. So I look forward to the testimony and the questions and answers. And with that, I yield to Ranking Member Rogers for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I really appreciate you organizing this hearing today, and I appreciate the witnesses being here and taking the time to prepare. I know it takes a lot of effort. Given Putin's war of choice, now is an especially important time for us to focus on how we provide security assistance to our allies and partners. Security assistance, cooperation, and partnership programs run the full gamut, from training to lethal aid. It enhances our diplomatic efforts to promote peace, it strengthens our global presence, and it improves our ability to defend ourselves and our allies. These programs have proven successful in countering terrorism and positioning us to prevail in the great power competition. In countries around the globe, security assistance enables us to effectively confront malign influence of China and Russia. There is no greater example of the potential of these programs than what we see in Ukraine. Unfortunately, the assistance provided by Ukraine, to Ukraine by this administration hasn't reached its full potential. It's been too little, too late. This crisis began unfolding back in October. At that time, Senator Inhofe and I implored Secretary Austin to send anti-air and anti-ship capabilities to Kyiv. Our hope was that the administration would take that threat from Putin seriously and publicly airlift javelins, harpoons, and stingers as deterrents. For months, Ukrainians pleaded with us to send them these systems, but the White House chose not to act. They were more concerned about provoking Putin than defending democracy in Ukraine. It took until January of this year for the first shipments to arrive in Ukraine. And according to public press reports, it was only a couple of days ago that the administration finally agreed to send stingers after Germany, Finland, and the Baltics. As I said, it's been too little, too late. We're seeing the horror of Putin's war play out in front of us. My colleagues and I sounded the alarm that Ukraine needed more lethal aid months ago. We sponsored legislation to provide that aid. So I implore the Speaker to bring the NIT Act up for a vote as soon as possible. With Ukraine under attack, it is now more important than ever to reinforce our NATO allies, especially those on the Eastern Front. Romania, Poland, and the Baltic states need advanced integrated air defense assets, missile systems like the HIMARS and the ATACMS, and enhanced permanent U.S. troop presence. And they need it yesterday. China is watching now as how we respond to this crisis. Now is not the time for equivocation. This administration needs to stand up to Putin. The security of our nation and our allies are at stake. Thank you again for our witnesses for joining us this morning. I look forward to your testimony. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a statement from Ranking Member McCall. With that, I yield back.
Hearing no objection, so ordered. Ms. Karlin, you are recognized.
Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Rogers, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. I respectfully submit my written statement for the record and will provide brief opening remarks. I appreciate the invitation to testify before you today on the Department of Defense's approach to engagement with our allies and our partners through security cooperation. The United States is at a pivotal moment with our allies and partners in meeting the challenges of today and tomorrow. Together, we face unprecedented challenges to our security, including the People's Republic of China's global ambitions to rival the United States and Russian aggression that threatens the territorial integrity of Europe today in Ukraine. All the while, we battle historic transnational threats like climate change and a global pandemic. One of the most important ways that we will meet these challenges is by renewing a U.S. strategic advantage, our unmatched network of allies and partners. Security cooperation is an important tool that helps key allies and partners strengthen their defense and enhances our ability to rely on one another in a time of need. The forthcoming National Defense Strategy will emphasize how the Department will strengthen these alliances and partnerships to advance national security through integrated deterrence. As Secretary Austin has underscored, integrated deterrence is working across domains and the spectrum of conflict, knit closely with the rest of the government and our allies and partners on the most critical security challenges. The Department of Defense has learned from large-scale assistance programs that, for lasting impact, a comprehensive engagement plan means more than training and equipping. We aim to help partners with not only specific capabilities, but also with institutional integrity and an ability to promote our shared values, notably the promotion and protection of human rights and good governance and legitimacy of the security sector. Resilient partnerships thrive when values and deeds align. Security cooperation aims to uphold that approach. To be sure, the degree of partnership should not be measured by the quantity of security cooperation programs, but rather by their quality, including transparency and effectiveness of security cooperation and assistance. A key aspect of the success of the security cooperation enterprise is collaboration to ensure the policy and strategic alignment of security cooperation. That includes the Department of Defense and the Department of State, as demonstrated by today's hearing. Internal to the Department of Defense, we are tightening our alignment as well. We recently brought the Defense Security Cooperation Agency under the umbrella of the Assistant Secretary for Strategy, Plans, and Capabilities in the Office of the Secretary of Defense for Policy to facilitate better collaboration and coordination within the Department of Defense and with our external partners. We also formed a new Office for Global Partnerships, which deliberately integrates humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, and human rights with the existing processes related to security cooperation. We are emphasizing the centrality of these areas of defense cooperation in a way that benefits allies and partners in need. Success requires teamwork, and I can assure you that our entire team is focused on embracing it. The Department's focus on security cooperation has evolved over time, and it has greatly benefited from congressional reforms. 5 years ago, Congress enacted unprecedented legislation empowering the Department to support allies and partners through a consolidated range of Title X U.S. Code security cooperation authorities designed to advance U.S. interests and with full coordination of the Department of State. In doing so, the message was clear. Security cooperation should be deliberate and holistic. It should evolve based on consistent learning and reflect the values the United States stands for. Today, our cooperation with allies and partners includes military-to-military engagements, capacity building, education and training activities, humanitarian assistance activities, and robust exercises with key partners. While the Department has implemented these reforms through meaningful improvements to security cooperation, more remains to be done. To seize the opportunity for further change, we are focusing on 3 priority areas: prioritizing who and what we invest in, focusing on sustainable impact, and adopting a holistic, integrated approach to how we execute security cooperation programs. I began by sharing with you how the U.S. network of alliances and partnerships is a strategic advantage that competitors cannot match. I conclude by sharing that this advantage is not a given. It requires active involvement by the entire U.S. government, listening to partners' concerns and contexts, and taking a thoughtful and deliberate approach to how we employ our resources to meet our priorities. This is facilitated by good strategy, good policy, and close partnership among the Department of Defense, the Department of State, and Congress. I appreciate your leadership on this critical issue, and I thank you for the opportunity to share our vision for engagement with allies and partners through security cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lewis.
Good morning. Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Rogers, distinguished members of the committee, I am honored to be here today. I'm going to give my oral statement and ask that my written statement be submitted for the record.
I was just going to tell you to pull the microphone a little bit closer to you with my microphone off. So it is complicated. Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm here to speak with you about the importance and value of security cooperation and security assistance, and the vital role these functions play as tools of foreign policy in our relationships with partners and allies. I sit before you to discuss these matters at a time when that proposition is being tested and displayed as at few points in history, as the bombs rain down on the hospitals and schools of Kyiv, as the Russian tanks roll through the Ukrainian countryside, as we see before our eyes the sites of war in the European theater that we had imagined had been retired to history, I can say that I am proud of the support the United States have provided to Ukraine in and in advance of their time of need, and proud of the remarkable courage of the Ukrainian armed forces and the Ukrainian people as they wield our assistance to push back on Russia's unforgivable assault. And our support to Ukraine demonstrates the wide arrays of tools that state and the Department of Defense can bring to a partner security sector. Since assuming office last January, this administration has provided over $1 billion to Ukraine's defensive capabilities, including through foreign military financing, the DoD Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, and other program lines. Through the Multinational Joint Commission, we work with Ukraine and our allies to identify military requirements and match funding streams to support the needed defensive capabilities, ranging from radars to javelins. Through the Excess Defense Articles program, we've delivered to Ukraine armed Coast Guard cutters to create asymmetric maritime capability in the Black Sea. In addition, through our programs such as the International Military Education and Training Authority, we've supported the development of a cadre of professional and Western-looking mid- and senior-level Ukrainian officers. And through a series of exercises, the Defense Department has strengthened the interoperability of our forces and Ukraine's tactical and operational capabilities. Then, as the threat from Russia sharpened, we have used the Presidential Drawdown Authority an unprecedented 3 times in the space of 6 months, including this weekend's $350 million package, the largest presidential drawdown package in U.S. history, to provide urgently needed ammunition, Javelin anti-tank missiles, and the Stinger man-portable air defense systems to Ukraine. At the same time, we continue to expeditiously process and approve requests for deliveries of U.S. origin material, military equipment to Ukraine from our allies and partners, which is the theme of this hearing, under our third-party transfer authority. As the Assistant Secretary for Political Military Affairs, or PM, this mission is at the core of my responsibilities. PM is on the front lines of this effort that links diplomacy and defense to bolster U.S. national security. My team works closely with the Department of Defense, with Congress, and the U.S. defense industry to deliver tools and training that supports our foreign policy, strengthens our allies and partners' abilities to provide for their defense, and contributes meaningfully to the stability of the rules-based international order. Day to day, the Bureau of Political Military Affairs oversees approximately $7 billion in security sector assistance programs annually, which accounts for roughly 20% of the Department of State and USAID's total annual assistance. This assistance includes foreign military financing, an appropriated grant assistance program through which partners are able to procure U.S. origin defense capabilities almost entirely by buying into the Defense Department procurement process, and international military and education and training that enables foreign military personnel to study beside their U.S. counterparts. In addition, the Bureau concurs on behalf of the Secretary of State with multiple Department of Defense security cooperation authorities totaling approximately $9 billion annually as required by law. And we share this burden of security with our allies and partners, and we work together to address the challenges around the world. These tools, Mr. Chairman, apply not only in times of crisis, but help us shape a world that is less susceptible to such threats. As we turn as well to the pacing threat from the PRC and its model of autocracy poses to the rules-based order, we can look to security cooperation and security assistance as a key element of our response. For decades, for example, we have worked to strengthen our security cooperation with key allies such as Japan and South Korea, while creating new partnerships with countries like Vietnam, and while working hand in glove with Taiwan to strengthen that brave island's defense and deterrence. And this administration intends to deepen and expand that cooperation in the months and years ahead. Over the years, commitments like these have created new opportunities for interoperability, new allies to deter aggressive behavior, and new partners to help meet global challenges. Real partnership means bearing burdens together with everyone doing their part, because no single nation can afford to carry that weight alone. So I thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. The Department of State would not be able to achieve the level of security cooperation we have without our key partners, the Department of Defense, the interagency, our foreign partners, and you, the United States Congress. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very, very much. Dr. Karlin, as you mentioned in your remarks, I think one of the big advantages that we have in terms of building alliances, what we have to offer the world is security assistance. We're better at it than most people who are any other country that could offer it, both in terms of the quality of the equipment, the training we provide, and we have a number of programs, as you know, that enable defense cooperation and providing defense equipment. At the same time, there's increasing pressure, depending on the countries that we're helping. Throughout Africa, there's been people we've helped who have then led coups against the government. Certainly, right now in the Middle East, there's a particular focus on Saudi Arabia and the UAE, where we've built partnerships with them. The war in Yemen has put pressure on our government to back off and not provide that security assistance. In the Philippines, we've had that problem as well. Now, we attempt to balance that. We have the Leahy Law that requires respecting human rights. But I'm just wondering, how do we strike that balance? And I'm particularly focused on the UAE. The situation in Yemen is very, very complex. But at a minimum at this point, we have slow-walked some of our weapon sales that were supposed to go to UAE because of those concerns. How do you see us balancing that? Because what I'm fearful of right now is a lot of countries, and the UAE is at top of that list. We saw that they were one of the countries that abstained in the vote against Russia. They're hedging their bets, and if it doesn't come from us, they're going to go to Russia and China. How do we avoid losing those folks while we're concerned about what else they might be doing? Concerns about human rights, concerns about conflict in the region. How does the DoD look at balancing those concerns? And I'd be interested in Ms. Lewis's comments about that as well.
Thank you very much, Chairman. In your opening remarks, you had talked about how we can't do this on our own, and I think that is spot on. Indeed, we shouldn't do it on our own. It works so much better, as we're seeing in Ukraine, of course, today, when we've knit together a cohort of countries to really ensure effective security cooperation. What's different about when the United States gives security cooperation, as you know, is that we have some real standards. We don't support corruption. We don't support transactional relationships. What we try to do is emphasize the rule of law. We try to emphasize human rights, all in line with our values, because at the end of the day, frankly, that makes militaries more effective, and that's in all of our interests. So as we work closely with the UAE in particular, we work with them on protecting their territory, defending their territory. But as with all countries, it's important that we have frank conversations about how and in what ways we think they can be more effective at what they're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lewis.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to concur with Dr. Karlin on the importance of providing our security assistance and working very closely together with our allies and partners around the world. And as you mentioned, we have to really continue to balance those concerns with our deep and strong relationships as we work with countries. Also, on UAE specifically, we remain committed to providing the F-35s and the MQ-9s. We are having regular discussions with the UAE on those.
If I may, we remain committed to that.
Yes.
It doesn't seem to ever happen, and they're starting to notice.
We are talking to them on a regular basis. They know that we are committed, and we are making sure that they have all of the information they need to move forward with those, and at the same time, making sure that they are also complying with the commitments that they made as part of that process, and we're continuing that discussion with them. I would also note, and I think Dr. Karlin mentioned this, that the UAE is really facing enhanced threats from the Houthis inside Yemen. And we have also remained committed to partnering with them as they manage that problem and that challenge.
Thank you. And one last question. The cooperation between the Department of Defense and Department of State, and also development assistance, if you could talk a little bit about how well you work together. I mean, this was a big focus, certainly coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan, but in the counterterrorism effort across Africa, across Asia and the Middle East. It's not just security assistance that we provide. We also want to make sure that we're providing development assistance, and to do that, we need certainly state and DoD working together, but a number of other agencies. You mentioned the rule of law being important. Department of Justice is involved in that. Certainly when we're talking about healthcare, that's where you get into USAID. How well do you think that partnership is working, the sort of intergovernmental approach here to go forward?
Thank you, Chairman. I think the level of cooperation is really unprecedented, and for a lot of that, I have to thank Congress, because the 2017 National Defense Authorization Act, one of the big priorities, as I think we all saw in it, was to ensure that we were talking as often as possible, talking from the earliest stages of which countries and programs would we prioritize, how would we design them, how would we look at execution, and then how would we do assessment, monitoring, and evaluation. And that goes beyond kind of more traditional security cooperations to involve things like humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. It really is a close-knit partnership that involves extremely regular dialogues, which I think has resulted in a more healthy and productive approach to this issue.
Thank you.
May I just add that I think as we look at our foreign policy, the foreign policy of the United States, we need diplomacy, we need development, and obviously we need to have our security assistance deeply involved as well. And I have to say, having been here for 4 months, that I am truly impressed with the deep cooperation at every level, from the action officer all the way up to the most senior levels of the department, as well as with USAID, as we look at how to counter the threats that the U.S. faces. But also, as you point out, if we're going to solve these problems, we have to work hand in glove. One of the things I'm very focused on is security sector governance, and part of that is because of the issues that you have just raised. We need to make sure that ministries of defense know how to procure in ways that combat corruption. We need to be talking about our American values in terms of democracy, human rights. And we have to work hand in glove on all of those programs with USAID and other pieces of the State Department.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity. I am the uglier version of Mr. Rogers, so
Mr. Whitman, I apologize.
that's okay, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Ms. Lewis, Dr. Karlin, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to go directly to what I see as a divergence in what's happening in the world as it relates to larger spheres of influence, the United States and China specifically. As we've watched China work to expand their spheres of influence, what we see is a very transactional effort that they take. They go to countries, they engage them, they build a road for them, they build a building, and in exchange for that either have an agreement for certain resources in the country, promising economic development, then that never quite occurs. We see Chinese nationals come in and do the work. All these things, and the country afterwards goes, well, where's the benefit to this country? Now, for years through USAID, we did many of the same intended things, but in a much, much different way. The Chinese, with their One Belt, One Road initiative, too, are looking to tie countries together, but also to isolate. I think there's a great opportunity there for us in many areas of the world to build or redevelop relationships, especially in countering the Chinese effort and how they do things through opportunism and through exploitive means with these other countries. And I think those countries are starting to see it. But in many instances, we haven't had the best record in what we've done to develop relationships with other countries. So my question is this, what do we do twofold? What do we do to counter the Chinese efforts as they look to establish these relationships? I argue they're transactional. And what do we do to create longer-term relationships? And what do we do and how do we do it in areas that are incredibly important, like Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, Micronesia, Malaysia, those areas that we know are, unfortunately, I think, moving towards the influence of China because they're watching how things are unfolding. And do you think it begins with developing deeper economic relationships that would then lead to strategic relationships?
Thank you very much. I think Ranking Member, that you are spot on when you were talking about this transactional approach that the Chinese take. And I would add to that, that is fomenting dependencies. It encourages corruption. It undermines the institutions and the rule of law. And it's, as you know so well, it's just a completely diametrically opposed approach to what we do, and frankly, to what's good for that country and good for that country's people. And so regarding your first question on kind of how we counter it, I think it's twofold. One is to shine a spotlight, make sure that all the countries see what's happening and understand what's going on and why that's not in their long-term interest. The second thing I would say is help them understand why our model's different, why our model of strengthening their institutions, of institutional capacity building, strengthening advisors within their Ministry of Defense, showing them that alternative model, ensuring that they can sustain the material we give them and it doesn't break down quickly. Right. So that's how I would answer your first question. On your second question, in the longer term, and I'll defer to Assistant Secretary Lewis on the foreign policy elements of it, but it would seem to me that a more holistic approach, a more whole-of-government approach, does have an outsized effect. I would just note on Southeast Asia, we're seeing some really positive steps for some of these. I think part of it is because of the relationships are getting closer. Part of it is I think that they're seeing this approach the Chinese are taking and the faults within it. But just to take one example, in Indonesia, the Chief of Defense spent 8 years studying in the United States. He's trying to professionalize their military. He wants to heighten institutional capacity building with us. So I think we're seeing some positive case studies that we really do need to build on. Thank you.
Ms. Lewis?
Thank you. I fully concur with Dr. Karlin, and I really appreciate you asking this question. I think this is a central focus of our work right now. And we do need to, and I completely believe that not only does the United States have the best military equipment available, but what you get when you purchase from the United States is the total package. That's what Dr. Karlin was referring to. You get the training, you get the deep relationships with us. We work with you on maintenance on all of the pieces. And as you point out, we're not coming in and you end up debt laden and asking for minerals on the side. And I think we have focused on that. We need to focus on that both in the region itself, but I also think in Africa, in Latin America as well. And so this is a center of our focus at the State Department.
And the gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Landry is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we got you. Go ahead, Jim.
Very good. Let me begin. First, I want to thank our witnesses for your testimony today. Very insightful. Dr. Karlin, if I could start with you. Over the last week, we've seen an uptick in Chinese aggression against Taiwan, as much as the world has had its eyes on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Can you discuss the importance of activities like the Pacific Deterrence Initiative or the Ukrainian Security Assistance Initiative in supporting and assuring our allies?
So before they answer this, Chair, Jim Langevin, if you could just try to be a little more clearer directly into your microphone, it'd be helpful for us in the room. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'll pull it closer.
Did the witnesses get the question?
Congressman, if you don't mind, I actually only got about half of it, and I'd hate to miss some of it if you don't
All right,
mind.
let's do everyone a favor and start the clock over at 5 minutes. Can we do that? I'm going to do that.
Okay.
Love it when Adam's not here. So start the clock over at 5 minutes, and Representative Langevin, go ahead again.
Okay, thank you. The question's for Dr. Karlin. Are you hearing more clear now?
Much better, sir.
Okay. Over the last week, we've seen an uptick in Chinese aggression against Taiwan as much as the world's attention and size has been focused on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Can you discuss the importance of activities like the Pacific Deterrence Initiative or the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative in supporting and assuring our allies?
Thank you very much, Congressman, and thanks for your patience on the technical side. We have absolutely seen this uptick by the Chinese around Taiwan over the last week, but also even over the last few months, and I would say we are watching it very closely. We are talking to our allies and partners about it and looking at what steps that we need to take as well, because it's problematic, it is unhelpful, and it is also unsafe. more broadly, you had cited, Congressman, these holistic initiatives like the Pacific Deterrence Initiative, Security Cooperation Initiative as it relates to Ukraine. I might even add to that list things like the European Deterrence Initiative that Congress had pulled together a few years ago. What's really nice about these efforts is they ensure that we're taking a holistic approach to how we are dealing with a challenge. Just to take one of those examples, when we look at the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, that has resulted in billions of dollars of support to Ukraine since the 2014 Russian invasion. It's also been helpful in working with Ukraine on some necessary defense reforms that they have needed to make. So overall, I think these efforts help us as we approach challenges in a more holistic way. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Karlin, if I could continue with you, we understand that the concept of integrated deterrence will play a large role in the upcoming national defense strategy. And I've long believed that that no war will ever be fought again without the inclusion of cyber. So how will cyber be incorporated into, in quotes, integrated deterrence, both in our plans and strategies and alongside our allies?
Thank you, Congressman. That is absolutely an area that we are looking closely at. It is really easy to take a traditional approach to conflicts and think, as we are looking at responses, what's the ground element, what's the maritime element, for example. And we know that there are newer and different domains that we've got to account for. Cyber is a perfect example. Space is another one. And so what's nice about the concept of integrated deterrence is it forces us to baseline looking across the different domains, looking across the spectrum of conflict, and doing that in partnership with our colleagues across the government and also with our closest allies and partners. So this is fundamental to how I think we need to think about future contingencies and future concepts of operations. Thank you.
Thank you. My next question, I'll start with Ms. Lewis, and then if we have time, Dr. Karlin can chime in as well. But technological cooperation with our allies and partners is critical to our success abroad. However, we've seen various interoperability issues hindering us and our allies from quickly and effectively working together. So what efforts are we making to ensure that we are in lockstep with our allies and partners, and they are with us when it comes to our technological capabilities?
Well, first of all, thank you for raising this very important question. And we are focused on this.
Could you pull the microphone closer, please?
Yeah, second time I'm having that problem. What I was saying is we are singularly focused on this question of interoperability. And I know both here, both at the State Department and the Defense Department. And as we work with our partners and allies, we are looking at providing them with systems where they can work with our military. And sometimes that also includes upgrading systems that they already have. So we have worked across Europe and then with other close allies to make sure that we are moving forward with upgrading all of their equipment when necessary, and again, providing them with what they need. On the tech side, I think I will say that we do always have to be careful as we are supplying and working with our partners to make sure that we are protecting our own technology, and that is something we also work on at the same time as we work on interoperability. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. I think my time's just about up, so I'll thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the witnesses being here today. Dr. Karlin, in the midst of Putin's war, I regret your focus on climate change based on extremist science is particularly bizarre today, as the Biden policies of destroying energy jobs in America led to the United States purchase of Putin oil to finance the mass murder that's going on today in Ukraine. And now to focus additionally on electric cars with Chinese batteries by this extremist philosophy to finance the largest military buildup in peacetime in world history, which will empower the Chinese Communist Party against American families. Getting real, instead of diverting to the environmental extremism, we need to face the existential threat of Putin today and the Chinese Communist Party maybe later today. In light of that, to address what we're doing now, I was grateful to introduce the Ukraine Democracy Defense Lend-Lease Act of 2022. This was to streamline the process of lending military equipment in defense of civilian populations in Ukraine. It's very ironic that when I was in St. Petersburg, I discovered that the Lend-Lease policy was largely responsible for saving Russians in the Nazi siege of Leningrad. And now we have a program that could save the Ukrainians in the siege of Kyiv by Putin. With this particular program, is there any effort and what can be done to promote Lend-Lease, to promote the law that I proposed, and what can be done even without the law?
Thank you very much, Congressman. I am not familiar with this exact law that you cite, but I would note broadly that we have had a steady drumbeat of assistance and support to Ukraine, to the legitimate government of Ukraine, and to helping its military as it quite literally is engaging in the fight today. We have focused that assistance, which has come together quite astonishingly quickly. I think Assistant Secretary Lewis has noted that the level of that support has been unprecedented in presidential drawdown authority, and we're really trying to tailor that to the needs that Ukraine's military has today and to systems that we know they are already trained on that they can employ. Thank you.
And additionally, it's been cited, again, I'm really grateful, the leadership, President Donald Trump is the person who provided the first Javelin missiles to defend the people of Ukraine. And then flash forward, who would imagine how successful now Germany is providing Javelin missiles after initially saying they wouldn't even allow the Javelin missiles of Estonia to cross their country. And so, indeed, President Vladimir Zelensky has unified the world to defend the people of Ukraine. With that in mind, has the United States provided Harpoon missiles to the Zelensky government?
Thank you very much, Congressman. You noted Germany's unprecedented move, and I will just say I think it's extraordinary to see what our European allies have been doing to support Ukraine, particularly over the last few days. It's quite literally unprecedented. In terms of the support that we have been giving Ukraine, particularly through the presidential drawdowns, since September, there's been a wide range of support, including Stinger missiles, Javelin missiles, anti-tank rocket systems, grenade launchers, more than 2,000 tons of ammunition, including mortar and artillery rounds, small arms, machine guns. It is indeed a lengthy list of capabilities.
And I'm glad to see the change in policy, because when I was in Kyiv in December, the plan was to provide $40 million after the invasion. And so thank goodness again, President Zelensky has been so successful. Additionally, Ms. Lewis, back on Taiwan, we have the agreements that we have with Indo-PACOM to provide defense, and on the very day that Putin invaded Ukraine, there were military flights by the Chinese against Taiwan. We need to be providing every and any item that could be provided of the most advanced equipment to protect the 23 million people of Taiwan. What is being done diplomatically to do this?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. And I agree that we need to make it absolutely clear that our support for Taiwan is rock solid. We have provided $18 billion to them in security assistance, and we are going to continue to do that. We are working on with them on making sure that they have the appropriate asymmetric defense capabilities, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you very much, and peace through strength. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Larson is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the record, 2017 U.S. imports of Russian crude and petroleum products was 3.84% in 2017 as a total, up to 6.87% in 2020, and it's increased last year. It's going to take a little while for us to turn off the momentum that started in 2017 with Russian crude oil imports. Having said that, I want to move on to the actual situation we're talking about and ask Ms. Karlin what details you can provide to this committee about the DOD's portion of the recent $6.4 billion request from the administration to support Ukraine and Europe.
Thank you very much, Congressman. My understanding is that much of that focuses on the force posture changes and the costs that are inherent in those, the operating costs, given that, of course, while we have had a very sizable force posture in Europe, I think it's been about 80,000 or so, we have
About 93,000 or so, yeah.
I'm sorry, sir?
It's higher than that, go ahead.
It has since surged, of course. So now we've got about 100,000 either in Europe or in European waters. And so my understanding is most of that request really looks at those operating costs. And then a chunk of it is looking at replenishment of stocks, since we have now done kind of the third, the unprecedented presidential drawdown. So this would help fill some of the material that the military services have then been able to facilitate the transfer of to Ukraine. Thank you.
Yeah, if Russia manages to control Ukraine, so that Ukraine is no longer an independent sovereign country, what DoD tools exist to support making Ukraine an independent and sovereign country again that has control over its own borders?
Thank you very much, Congressman. Of course, it should not go without saying that what we are seeing in Ukraine right now is completely a decision by President Putin.
It is a decision by Putin. There's only one president responsible for this invasion. That's President Putin. So the question I have is, what DoD tools exist to support making Ukraine an independent sovereign country again? If we can just get to that.
Of course. Thank you very much.
We can give speeches up here, too. I don't really want the speeches.
Thank you very much, Congressman. What we're doing is trying to ensure our commitment to NATO is rock solid. That has been critical to our force posture. As it relates to Ukraine specifically, we're doing all we can to support the legitimate government of Ukraine and its military right now, as it frankly is engaging in such a critical fight. And we understand this is a dynamic situation, one that we, of course, closely with our colleagues at the Department of State, are monitoring closely.
If there's not a legitimate government in Ukraine at some point in the near future, what DoD tools exist to support the legitimate leadership of Ukraine?
Thank you, Congressman. While I understand it is a dynamic situation, as I noted, we're focused on supporting the legitimate government. I'm a little wary of getting into hypotheticals right now, but I can very much assure you we're looking at a wide range of scenarios, cognizant that further developments may warrant a relook. And I know that that is an effort that we will want to do very closely with our State Department colleagues, of course, but in particular very closely with Congress, whose support for Ukraine has just been extraordinary throughout this period.
Yeah, I know it's something we don't want to contemplate too much openly, but I do want to contemplate that we have to have options that we have to consider from congressional side to be supportive. So if you're thinking about the use of existing authorities or additional authorities, at least within the DoD, be helpful to keep us informed of that as you move along.
Absolutely, Congressman.
Yeah, thanks. With that, I'll yield back, and I recognize the actual ranking member as opposed to the pretend ranking. Kind of tricked us all when Rob sat down. Mike Rogers for as much time as Adam used.
I thank the gentleman. I only have one question, and I hope y'all can answer it. You know, the president has announced that he's sending additional U.S. troops over to join our NATO allies in the Eastern European Front NATO countries to help with those people fleeing Ukraine, the refugees. We have been talking about sending additional permanently stationed troops to Romania and Poland and in the Baltics prior to the invasion. And my question is, does the administration support this result that after this invasion that we make those troop presence permanent in those Eastern European Front countries?
Thank you very much, Congressman. Obviously, we are following this situation really closely. As you might recall, last August or so, September or so, Secretary Austin released his global posture review, which had looked closely at our posture in Europe and largely saw that it was about right. We recognize this dynamic situation now requires us to give it another fine-toothed look to see what's necessary to ensure that we've got deterrence of Russia and that we can absolutely 150% say that that NATO is safe and secure. So we're looking at what sort of troop presence, whether it's rotational or permanent, is necessary given this this current security environment, both in the near term and frankly in the long term.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, I do think that it would send a great message to our NATO allies that we are serious about what the president said in his public address a few days ago when he said we were absolutely going to do everything in our power to protect our NATO allies at their borders. I think the best way to demonstrate this is to enhance our position there. We do need an additional brigade in Romania on the Black Sea. I'd like to see the Stryker Brigade that's moved there temporarily made permanent. Poland has agreed to pay for basing if we would establish a permanent base there. I think that's an obvious that we should do, but also the Baltics are very vulnerable. So I do hope that you all will look at establishing permanent basing in those areas. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Mr. Courtney for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses this morning. Again, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that 2 items be admitted to the record. An article from Reuters, which shows that Canadian oil exports actually shattered records in recent weeks. So the notion that there's pipeline, interference in terms of Canadian oil is clearly not being. It's not in conformance with the data. Also, oilprice.com just reported yesterday or a couple days ago that the U.S. rig count has grown for the 18th straight week. So the notion that the Biden administration is suppressing oil and gas, or that Canadian oil is not coming into the U.S., as both of these industry journals indicate, is in fact not correct.
Without objection.
When we talk about ways to help our allies in the situation in Ukraine, I think, one, and it's not strictly under the Department of Defense, but the approach that the administration took in terms of sharing intelligence over the last really 2 or 3 months is very, I think, distinctive in terms of that, we did not sort of try and really pick and choose which allies were going to get information, or even the world for that matter. And I just wonder if you could maybe spend a minute, Dr. Karlin, just sort of talking about the thinking behind that approach and why it really helped, I think, blunt any false flag operations or any other misinformation in terms of the lead up.
Thank you very much, Congressman. I do think this was an unprecedented effort to shine the spotlight on Russia's plans and Russia's behavior. And no doubt we'll want to study its impact for years and years. It was extraordinary to watch the work of the intelligence community and just how quickly they were able to do this declassification when necessary, or to make material releasable to our allies and partners. I don't believe that a day has gone by since early December where either in the Defense Department or the State Department there hasn't been a discussion with an ally or a partner on what we are seeing, what we're understanding, and trying to share that. That's been useful in ensuring that we have a common threat picture. It's also, I think, been useful to the world, to our public, so that they understand, contrary to when we've seen Russian disinformation in the past, like in 2014, no kidding, who is exactly to blame for what's going on, and that is solely President Putin. Thank you.
That helped in terms of making sure there was no daylight with our allies in terms of everyone's understanding of what in fact was going on. Is that right?
Oh, sorry, please.
100%. And I think we have really seen NATO, Europe, our allies and partners around the world come together and speak with a united voice against what Putin is doing inside Ukraine. And I think this effort, again, I have to join Dr. Karlin in commending the intelligence community for the unbelievable work they did, in producing the intelligence, informing policymakers such as yourselves, and then making sure that it was accessible to our allies and partners so that they understood what was going on. I know at the State Department that this has been a key part of the conversation that we've had on a literally a daily basis.
As long as we're talking about unprecedented efforts by the administration, I'd like to just spend a second on AUKUS, which again is obviously the crown. It's sharing technology that arguably is the crown jewels, nuclear propulsion technology, which we've done with only one other country back in 1958 with the UK. And again, I would just note that the public opinion polls in Australia after that agreement was announced were over 60% approval and very little opposition, which I think has really gone a long way in terms of reasserting the fact that we're serious about that alliance with that country. But could you also just comment for a second the fact that there's other aspects than just submarines, and that there's other ways that AUKUS is going to strengthen our bonds, and also that it's not exclusive just to the three countries?
Thank you very much, Congressman. I really appreciate that you brought up AUKUS, which is this historic effort to knit together our country, Australia, and the United Kingdom with a serious, robust technological security partnership. The undersea piece is probably the first one. I think it's the one so many of us have focused on, but it's very much expanding, looking into key areas like artificial intelligence and quantum as just two of them. And I think, frankly, this unprecedented effort is critical to Indo-Pacific security. I think when we look at, our relationship with Australia, just to take that, is obviously one that is historic. Australia has fought next to the U.S. military, I think, in just about every conflict over the last 100 years or so. As we see how we can get into the most sensitive technological cooperation, I think it just puts us in a very different ballgame. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen's time has expired. Dr. Desjardins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I'll start with Dr. Karlin. In your opening statement, I was pleased to hear your emphasis on the importance of integrated deterrence. And as you know, the foundation of integrated deterrence is our nuclear deterrent. As the Biden administration undertakes its nuclear posture review, have you solicited input from our European allies in your preparation for the NPR?
Thank you very much, Congressman. Indeed, we have, and we've done it at a wide variety of levels, from the Secretary of Defense all the way down to the desk officer. We've done it closely with our colleagues at the State Department and at the White House, and we've really done all we can to ensure we're hearing from our European allies, and also, I would note, our close allies in the Indo-Pacific, South Korea, Japan, and Australia. Thank you.
Okay, what are you hearing from them in terms of the nuclear declaratory policy? That seems to be a hot topic, and there seems to be indication that there may be a weakening of the no first use in terms of the Biden administration. What are our allies saying in regards to that?
Thank you very much, Congressman. In this wide variety of discussions, we've heard a lot from our closest allies, and the importance that they also put on extended deterrence, as we do. We've talked to them a lot and heard their thoughts on our need to have a safe, secure, and effective nuclear deterrent. And we have ensured throughout these conversations that we are getting their inputs, and that as decisions will be made by the President, of course, that we are in close discussions with them. Above all, I would just underscore that our extended deterrence commitments remain ironclad. Thank you.
Okay, I personally have had members of countries such as Poland reach out to me stressing the importance of not adopting a no first use declaratory policy, and I know that that's been in the talks considering Russian strategic nuclear exercises. I think that it's important that we do the right thing there, and I think that the impression I get from our allies is that they would not want us to have a no first use declaratory policy. So I would just add that. Also, there's been mention of dropping our low yield nuclear weapons program, and do you have any insight on that?
Thank you very much, Congressman. I would say the nuclear posture review, which has been a really rigorous interagency effort since, July or August or so, has really looked holistically at our nuclear capabilities, tried to tie them to our understanding of threat scenarios, the impact they have on deterrence, or the impact that they have on assurance. And I think that once final decisions are made on that, you'll see that. And once those decisions are made, I'd be more than willing to sit down and speak with you or your staff staff about this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Let's shift to China. We've kind of nibbled around this a little bit today. Obviously, what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, we have to keep our eye on
We've got to ensure that it is aligned to our biggest concerns, and that includes Indo-Pacific security as a top priority.
Okay, for both you and Ms. Lewis, I understand that Taiwan has made requests to the administration for access to foreign military financing dollars. It is apparent to me that if any country is in need of this funding, it's Taiwan. What has been the cause for the delay, and would congressional action help expedite this request?
Well, first of all, I really want to thank you for the question, because I do think we need to continue to focus on China and Taiwan, even at this moment where we are understandably looking at what's happening inside Ukraine. And I think, as you may know, we've provided over $18 billion of foreign military sales to Taiwan since 2017. We are always looking at ways to enhance that and improve their capabilities. We're particularly focused, as I mentioned before, on building the asymmetric capabilities of Taiwan, and we are working with them on a regular basis to do so. We're always happy to continue to work with your office and other members of Congress with additional ideas and ways that we can do so effectively.
Okay, thank you both. I yield back.